Alright, I'm back with another video, and welcome back to the Deity build series. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to do this either. So, one of the longest kind of requested remasters or remakes is my old Fist of Talos build. Back when the Deity build series was still young, and I was just doing the builds on my own, it wasn't like a community livestream type thing, I made a few builds that I'm not exactly proud of. This one probably being one of the most. Don't get me wrong, like, it's still a good build. The Fist of Talos was a fun build. It combined, Tempest, Cleric, and 4 Elements Monk. It was, but the problem is like, as a build, it was fine. As a Talos build, though, not really. The thing is, I kind of misread what Talos was about in general, and I know they're like an orc god, and yes, I have a human here, but we'll get more into that in a minute. And like they were about more like the chaos of nature rather than storms. I just saw like the deity icon being lightning and thought, oh yep, they're a lightning god, and like I made their whole backstory like a sailor and all that, and it's just no. Oh, I was also wrong. So I've since done more research into Talos and learned about a few cool things about how his clerics and other priests undergo a rite of passage called the Fury, in which they just destroy everything in sight, and it's like a holy ceremony, which involves a lot of killing and destroying. Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly the greatest thing in the world, is it? But I felt like this was kind of an interesting avenue to go down, because looking back on it, making a Talos build without Barbarian levels? The hell was I thinking? So we're rectifying this mistake today. However, this is not a remastered video. No, because I do think the original build as a build still stands. Just for the sake of making a proper deity build for this character, I did want to do a remake, keeping the same idea, but changing up a few things as we go to make a more interesting and faithful build overall. So, instead of the Fist of Talos, today we're building the Fury of Talos. Let's get into the build. Kicking things off, we are going to start off as Barbarian. This is going to give us access to everything we want in terms of weapon and armor proficiency, so we're going to be picking this up here. This is going to give us access to Rage, which again, the original build should have had, giving us extra damage with melee and improvised weapons, and throwing. We also gain unarmored defense, allowing us to add our Constitution modifier to our armor class while not wearing armor. We cannot wear heavy armor, otherwise we cannot use Rage, so we're going to be using clothing for this build, but you can go up to medium armor if you so choose. We're going to be playing as a human today. Now, I know Talos is generally kind of done as an orc god. I mean, that was sort of a thing, apparently, that was commented on way back when, but everything I looked into with Talos has him more appearing as like a human or a dwarf, and playing into the theme of like at least keeping some of the original design aspects of the old build. I decided to go with a human today, but it doesn't matter which race you play. Honestly, a dwarf would probably work really nice, because you could do like a dual warhammer thing or whatever, like with the dwarven thrower. That could be really fun. But again, we'll get into that a bit later. I've just decided to pay homage to the original build by playing a human today, but you can choose to play whatever you like. This will get us human versatility, giving us an extra skill to be proficient in, and the civil militia feature, which gives you stuff that we already have, so it doesn't matter. For our ability scores, we're actually going to be playing a dexterity-based barbarian today. However, by dumping strength, that obviously means you have room to throw on the hill giant elixirs if you want to get more power. So, if you want to do that, you can. Dexterity is at 16 because it is going to be our main attacking stat, and it's going to affect our AC. Constitution is at 14. We obviously will want this a bit higher, but we'll be able to bump it up with equipment. As you can see, we're wearing an old favourite, as well as the fact that we don't really need to level this up, because believe it or not, we're actually going to be using monks unarmored defense in this video, because as you can see, our wisdom is at 16, which monks need for their unarmored defense, and there are features which we'll get to later. I decided to bump charisma up to 12 because again, barbarian intimidation checks are absolutely hilarious, so we're going to be going with that today. For our skill proficiencies, I have gone with the Haunted One background because I do recommend playing this build as a Dark Urge. I feel like it fits really on theme for the build, because again, Talos is all about the chaotic force of nature itself, and just just pure want and destruction with nothing left. Basically, the quote for Talos on the wiki page is, all that Talos wishes to see is a world destroyed, so we are going to be a destructive force, which the Dark Urge is. So you're going to get medicine and intimidation proficiency. Again, I wanted that intimidation. And for our Barbarian skills, we're going to pick up athletics and perception. Athletics is just going to help patch up our lower strength score, but again, if you use the potions or elixirs even, that is going to shoot up into the stratosphere. And then I decided to go with religion. We are a follower of Talos after all, his chosen. We should have a little bit of knowledge of his church. So yeah, that is all that for the build. Let's for level 1, I should say. The build's not done yet, so let's keep going. At level 2, now you could keep within the kind of realms of the original Deity build series and go for the level 1 dip of Cleric here, which we are going to do. Now, for our level 1 dip of Cleric, we get a bunch of things. We're going to get 3 cantrips, access to a few prepared spells, and our domain spells feature. For our cantrips, we're not really going to be focusing on casting cantrips. Again, we're a barbarian, so we can't really cast spells while raging. So we're going to be taking just some general utility cantrips to use outside of combat. That being resistance, guidance, and thaumaturgy. Thaumaturgy is especially nice because it's going to give us advantage on intimidation checks. So we're going to be the scariest barbarian who ever lived. Which again, if we're this barbarian who's undergoing the rite of fury, yeah, we're going to be breaking a lot of shit, and that's going to scare some people. You're going to be very, very intimidating, which is what I wanted for this build. Just intimidation for days. Next up, for our subclass, our domain is Tempest if we're following Talos, so we're going to be taking Tempest today, which is going to give us everything we could possibly want. It's going to give us now 3 spells. It would normally be 2 as a vanilla build, giving you Thunderwave and Fog Cloud, but because we're using the Mistress Spells mod, which is available to all platforms, we are also going to be picking up Zephyr Strike here, allowing you to move like the wind and no longer provoke opportunity attacks, and before the spell ends, you can perform Zephyr Attack, which is an attack that deals extra force damage with advantage on the attack roll. So there's a little bit of an extra buff there if you're not raging, but you probably won't be using this too much. But our main thing that we're going to get here is our subclass feature, Wrath of the Storm, allowing us to retaliate with a reaction, dealing lightning or thunder damage, which the enemy has a saving throw on, but, you know, they take half damage even on a success. So basically, if we're getting hit, which is a barbarian, we're probably going to be doing quite a lot, we get to just attack with lightning or thunder damage for free, because yes, this is not a spell, it works while raging. So there you go. Our deity is obvious. I did not realize Bool was there. That's from the Kuatoa mod, which I will use eventually. Let me know if you want to see a Kuatoa build. But we're obviously going with Talos. Talos represents the uncaring and destructive force of nature. His followers see life as a set of random effects in a sea of chaos, and take what they can, for who can say when Talos will strike next. For us, it's right now. We also do get some extra skill proficiencies for this dip into Cleric, giving us access to History and Insight, but I might swap History for Persuasion. And then finally, for some prepared spells, it's hard to say what really fits for this build. There's 2 that I would immediately recommend though. Obviously, Create or Destroy Water. We're going to be using lightning attacks in this build. Spoilers, I mean we already have one as a reaction, so making our enemies wet is going to make it so that they will take double damage from our lightning attacks, so we can set up before raging with Create or Destroy Water and get a ton of damage. We're also going to get Command, because of course we are a scary dude. We could probably very easily command a creature to flee, but if we want to challenge them to one-on-one combat, we can force them to move closer. I don't know, I think this is just kind of a fun flavor spell leading into that scary big dude thing. And also, we have access to other spells, but we really aren't going to be using them. So yeah, I mean, normally I take Sanctuary on these builds, but I feel like this guy would absolutely not use Sanctuary. But if you don't care about flavor like that, you can take this, as it's one of the best spells in the game, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, most of these we've kind of already done. I guess Bane fits on theme, making it so creatures receive a penalty to their attack rolls and saving throws, but it requires concentration, so And Shield of Faith can give us extra AC in a pinch, so you can go with those here. Now, obviously in the original Fist of Talos build, we went up to 6 levels of Tempest Cleric, but here we're only using a 1-level dip. We're not really going to be using lightning spells as much with this build, as we're more focused on martial combat, so I don't feel a need to grab Destructive Wrath here, and I feel like we could get a little bit more out of taking more levels in our other classes, like Monk for example, which we're going to be going into next. So I feel like if you want to drop a level of Monk for this, you can, but it's entirely up to you. Now, I would say that if you're playing this build throughout the game, you're kind of going to do something where you're going to get to level 6 as Barbarian with the 1 level Cleric dip, and then once you have enough levels to reasonably respec, so I would say maybe around level 10-ish, you're going to respec into the Monk variant of the build to kind of get the full thing. So I would say probably play this as a straight Barbarian until you get to a high enough level where you feel comfortable taking the Monk levels, and then you want to respec so that you're level 4 of Barbarian instead of level 5, because you're going to get extra attack from Monk. So I'm going to be showing off the Barbarian levels first, and then we'll get into the Monk stuff a bit later. But if you're actually playing the game, you're probably just going to want to go to level 5 of Barbarian first and then respec later once you have enough levels. So, speaking of, let's continue. You get Danger Sense, giving you advantage on dex saving throws against traps, spells, and surfaces, which is great. You're also going to get Reckless Attack, which means until your next turn, you have advantage on your attack rolls, but enemies also have advantage to hit you. When we eventually get Monk's Patient Defense feature, we can actually cancel out the negative here, giving us just advantage on all of our attack rolls. We can use Patient Defense as a bonus action and just get hit for neutral rolls regardless. So I do think Reckless Attack has quite a bit of value on this build. Not that we're going for like Great Weapon Master shenanigans here, however, there is room for Great Weapon and Master shenanigans on this build if you want to. I just wanted to do something a little bit different today. Now here's something a bit fun. At level 3 we're going to get to choose a Barbarian subclass, and for the first time I think on this channel, pick your favourites. I don't think I've ever actually said that for a Barbarian build before, but each of these has value. Now I'm going to be going for a dual wielder setup on this build. So for my personal build here, Berserker is kind of okay. I used it in my testing and you would have seen it in the combat footage, and Berserker does have some unique things like the enraged throw and all that, but if you're doing the dual wielding setup, that bonus action attack that you're getting isn't really doing much for you. So I would say if you follow a dual wielding strategy like I am, maybe don't go for this one. But if you're doing a two-handed weapon or a weapon and a shield, something that where you can't really attack with your bonus action and maybe you're doing Great Weapon Master stuff, then Frenzied Strike giving you up to 3 attacks in a turn could be really, really nice with that setup. So it depends on the weapon setup you want to go for. Again, I'm showing off a dual wielder playstyle in this build because I haven't really done one in a while, but if you want to go for Great Weapon Master stuff, then Berserker is amazing and fits perfectly for this build because, come on, they're literally, followers of Talos are literally battle berserkers and like berserker priests, and I mean, I didn't even get into the Storm Lords. That's a whole different thing entirely, and honestly, that's a future build too. Although I already did name a build the Storm Lord recently and it had nothing to do with Talos. Have to figure that one out on the fly. But anyways, let's look at the other ones. Wild Heart obviously makes a lot of sense. Since we represent the chaos of nature, being directly attuned to nature does make a lot of sense. And I feel like because of this, we'll be able to get Speak of Animals, which is great, but the Bestial Heart would be amazing for us. You got Wolf Heart, so you can give your, basically, you can kind of pick your heart here. You can go for Wolf Heart, giving your allies advantage on attack rolls against nearby enemies. You can go for Bleeding with Tiger Hearts, giving you the bloody attack which makes enemies bleed. If you take a drink every time I say blood in that past minute, you're going to pass out. Next up, Elk Heart, which would allow you to dash around, and there's Eagle Heart, which you can do the jumping strike, but I just did a build about that. And then there's Bear Heart, which gives you resistance to all damage except psychic. Much as I hate to say it, as this is the default option for a lot of people, this is probably the best one to pick overall if you're going the Wild Heart route. And I feel like it fits greatly for the build. Becoming immune to all damage means that we're immune to fire, cold, lightning, thunder, not immune, resistant, sorry. Which would make a lot of sense for this build. We are a force of nature itself, therefore we are resilient against the forces of nature, being all the things that we're dishing out rather than taking. So I do feel like Bear Heart does kind of make the most sense, although I definitely do see an argument for Tiger Heart, especially because, again, the whole bloodlust thing, I do think that also makes sense. But then again, we do get Unrelenting Ferocity to give us healing. As a Barbarian, that's really nice to have. So if I was going to go Wild Heart, I'd personally be going Bear for this one. But again, it's a pick your favourite situation. Any of them will work. Pick what's fun for you. I mean, I can definitely see the Eagle Heart being fun, swinging down with 2 war axes onto someone's head. That is definitely a power fantasy that we see quite a lot in popular culture, in popular media, I should say. And then finally, Wild Magic, which I would argue also makes sense. We are the chaotic force of nature, wild and untamed. So having Wild Magic surge with random effects every time we rage, which can benefit from being like firing radiant beams out of our chest, to adding force damage to all of our weapon attacks, which we could do a lot of in a turn. Like, this is a cool subclass, and I do think it's very, very underrated. So I would actually say that wild magic is just as valid as anything else for this build. So like I said, this is a pick your favorite type build. Choose whatever Barbarian subclass you like. I think, though, for the dual-wielding setup, the most reliable option is going to be Wildheart Bear, so that is going to be my primary suggestion, but again, pick your favorite. At level 4, we're going to get to choose a feat, and for one of the feats on this build, like I said, I want a dual-wielder setup. Since we're not going to be dual-wielding light weapons here, we're going to be dual-wielding war axes, or battle axes, we are going to be going for the dual-wielder feat. But this is where, if you wanted to go for Great Weapon Master, you could slot it in here. If you wanted to, but then again, you can't. I mean, you'd have to use a finesse-based longsword since we're dexterity-based, or you'd have to use the elixirs of Hill Giant Strength if you wanted to do that, or the gloves of Hill Giant Strength. So you've got some stuff to work with there if you need to overall. Otherwise, you can also go for the lucky trait. You can go for some of Tasha's new feats if you got the mod installed. Which, again, is available on all platforms. You could get Fighting Initiate to get a fighting style, which could actually get you 2-weapon fighting as well, which we don't really need on this build. Again, as much as that seems stupid to say on a dual-wielding build, you don't really need it, because we get a lot of extra damage out of some features and such and blah, 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 that I'll get into later. But again, I really just wanted to dual-wield war axes because it looks cool. But you can get 2-weapon fighting from here if you want to. There's that option available to you. You can get the Crusher feat if you decide to go for like a bludgeoning weapon or something like that. You could go for Slasher, getting stuff like that as well. Like, there's so many cool things you could pick up here if you want. But I'm going to go with dual wielder for now. Again, this isn't the most optimized build in the world. There's some things that don't synergize, maybe as well as maybe some of my more optimized builds, but this one is just about having fun and making something cool, which still works really nicely. Then we're going to move on to our monk levels. Monk is going to give us a bunch of things right off the bat. We're now going to be getting our unarmored defense with wisdom, which is going to be what is going to be taking over because our wisdom is higher than our constitution at this point. So we're also going to get the ability to make dexterous attacks. So now all of our attacks that we make are going to be made with dexterity with our weapons. So maybe if you decide you do want to play like more of a monk early on in the game, then this will work a bit better because obviously we're going to have dexterity, but it's entirely up to you. We also have the Deft Strikes feature, making our unarmed strikes a bit more powerful, and whenever we make an attack with a monk weapon, which our weapons are, or while unarmed, we can make another attack as a bonus action. So you might even want to take an early level dip of this as well, just to get those bonus action attacks if you're not doing the dual wielder playstyle, so it's entirely up to you. Next up, at level 2, we're going to get Patient Defense, Step of the Wind Dash, and Disengage. This is going to give us a ton of more maneuverability, which we love, and Patient Defense is that feature that I said can offset the penalty from Reckless Attack. And if we don't use Reckless Attack, we just get to make ourselves even tankier by dodging a lot of the attacks coming our way, even with our big tanky Barbarian Rage HP. So there you go, pretty solid feature right there. At level 3, we get to choose our subclass, and I would say you've got two options here if you really want to stay on theme. We're going to be going down for this build the path of the original Fist of Talos build. We're going to be grabbing Way of the Four Elements. This is going to give us Disciple of the Elements, which I'll get into in a minute, but if you don't care about going for like elemental stuff and all that, you don't have to. You can just go Way of the Open Hand and frickin' beat people to death with the various flurry of blows. But we're going Way of the Four Elements because I want to throw some of nature's elements into here, even though we're not taking druid levels. But here's the thing though, even though we're getting these spells in quotations, those of you who have been on the channel long enough know that Way of the Four Elements spells in quotations are actually class actions in this game, meaning that you can cast them while raging, which means we get some fun stuff. First up, we're going to be grabbing Touch of the Storm, basically giving us Shocking Grasp, but it does 1d10 instead of 1d8. This spell has advantage on creatures with metal armor, and the target cannot use reactions after being hit. Costs a single key point. This is going to be one of our bread and butter lightning attacks that we're going to be using quite a bit throughout the game. Next up, we're going to grab Water Whip. Possibly we can use it to basically either knock a target prone or pull the target towards us. It's a dex save to do either of those things, but this is going to deal 3d10 bludgeoning damage, and we get to use kind of like, if our enemy is far away, we get to do the whole Mortal Kombat, like, get over here, and then wail on them with our axes. It's going to be really cool. Then the final option is entirely up to you. Chromatic Orb for a bunch of different elemental damage types. Ice Knife for a cold attack. Chill of the Mountain, also for a cold attack. You can go for the Fist of Unbroken Air to just punch with pure air, which is freaking sick. We've got Fist of the Four Thunders for thunder damage, but we kind of already have Thunderwave from Cleric, but yeah. I would actually say go for the other unique option here, Fangs of the Fire Snake. Now, this may not feel like very Storm-y, but fire is still a chaotic force of nature, and I do think this build can make good use of it. Basically, you're going to be doing an unarmed strike, but it's ranged, coming with an extra d10 of fire damage, and then from your next melee attack will deal an additional 1d4 fire damage after using this, which means our axes are going to light on fire, which is bloody awesome. So I would say this core is pretty good. The only downside I would say is obviously if you're making your enemies wet to make them vulnerable to lightning damage, and obviously they become resistant to fire damage, but still I feel like this is a good combo because you're not always going to be able to have the kind of create or destroy water thing up. And finally, from Way of Four Elements Monk, we're going to get Harmony of Fire and Water. While not in combat, regain half your key points, rounded down. So basically, it's more resources. What's not to love? At Monk level 4, we're going to get access to Slowfall, which is whatever, but we do get access to another feat. Now, at this point, it's up to you what you want to take. I'm going to probably bump up my Dexterity to an 18, but Wisdom is also a valid choice here for more AC and better spellcasting with the 4 elements stuff. But Dexterity is going to be our main thing since we're attacking more of our weapons than doing that anyway, so we're going to take Dex here. At level 5, we're going to be getting extra attack, so this is where I would say around level 10 is where you're going to want to respec. So this is also going to get a Stunning Strike, which again is just so great. Being able to stun targets is so powerful, and we can do it with both our weapons and our unarmed strikes. Let's keep going. At Monk level 6, your unarmed strikes now overcome resistance and immunity to non-magical damage, and we get to choose another Disciple of the Elements spell. Again, a pick your favourite situation, entirely up to you what you want to grab, but I think the best spell you can grab here is Clench of the North Wind. This is Hold Person while raging. Well, no, actually, because it's concentration. So you can use this without raging to get a bunch of attacks off that are all critical hits, but because it's concentration, unfortunately, we can't use it while raging. But of course, you have other options, all the stuff I said before. We've got Gong of the Summit, which is Shatter, as well as Embrace of the Inferno. So it's an up to you kind of what you want to pick. I do like Fist of Unbroken Air. I might take that one. And then finally, you've got a free level for whatever you want. I personally took level 7 of Monk for the extra key point, Evasion, making us even more tanky against spell effects, as well as Stillness of Mind to prevent us from being charmed or frightened, which feels right as a Barbarian. Level 5 of Barbarian wouldn't do much for us, except giving us a little bit more movement speed, and like I say, level 2 of Cleric wouldn't really do much, but you can absolutely take it if you want. But, of course, there are other 1 level dips you could grab. Fighter would give you the fighting style, which honestly probably makes a lot of sense to go with 2-weapon fighting for the dual wielding setup. Otherwise, I would say this is entirely optional. You can go for a 1 level dip of, I would say, Ranger could also be good, giving you, like, if you want, you know, you could get like Bounty Hunter or something, just extra proficiencies. An extra skill proficiency and like an extra resistance if you didn't take Wild Heart Bear. That could be really good. There's a lot of different things you can kind of do with this. I accidentally exited the level up screen. Whoops. This video is scuffed, I'll tell you what. So yeah, it's entirely up to you. If there's a level 1 dip or like a level up that you find enticing, feel free to take it, but I'm going to be grabbing level 7 of Monk. And that is the build. What you're going to be getting out of this is, well, a lot of cool things, actually. Obviously, a lot of my earlier builds have been Barbarian 4 Elements Monks. My Karlach Origin build, my Nero build, they were both that. And the combo works really, really well. You get the tankiness of a Barbarian, the flurry of blows and offensive power of the Monk. You get the spell casting while raging, which is always bloody fun, and you get all the fun flavor stuff that comes with that 1 level dip of Cleric as well, and the utility that comes with that as well. You've got damage, you've got tankiness, you've got healing, you've got utility, you've got it all in a nice, fun package. And I really, really like this playstyle. Again, I would say Barbarian Monk is one of my favorite builds in this game, and this specific variant is just so fun to play. You got a lot of resources to work with. And again, the feel of the build is going to feel great. That's all I can say. So, let's move on to the equipment. So starting off with our weapons, you've got a few things to work with here. Again, I wanted to go with the dual battle axe setup, so your endgame weapons are going to be as follows. Your main hand is going to have the vicious battle axe, which whenever you land a critical hit with a weapon or unarmed attack, it deals an additional 7 damage. So if you go for a bit of a crit fishing kind of thing, maybe you get the killer's sweetheart on this build, you're going to get a lot of extra damage. But as you score hits, as you kind of attack a lot with this build between flurry of blows, dual wielding, yada yada yada, your chances of getting hits, critical hits, are going to be quite high, which means you're going to get additional damage on them. This is also one of the only +2 battle axes in the game, which is very, very sad. In your offhand, you're going to have the Witchbreaker. You gain advantage on attack rolls against concentrating creatures, and it comes with a unique attack, which is the Hush You attack, dealing a bit of extra damage and can possibly silence your target. Unfortunately for us, we're not going to be able to use this unless we equip this in the main hand, and we kind of want Dollar Amorous in the main hand because it does more damage, but of course you can change that up if you so choose. In the other game though, you can use the Battle Axe +1. Yes, our options are very, very slim. If you want a guaranteed Battle Axe +1 that you can just pick up, I've linked in the description the Ceremonial Battle Axe, which you can get from the temple that hides the Githyanki Crash in Act 1. That is a guaranteed +1 Battle Axe that you can always pick up in your campaign. But again, this is only if you want to go with this dual-wielding playstyle. Go for two-handed weapons if you want. Go sword and board if you want. The world is your oyster. Choose whatever you want to grab for your weapon of choice. And again, that'll free up that feat. And again, you can take that one level tip of fighter as well if you want that extra fighting style to really spice things up. It's entirely up to you how you want to play this. I just love the iconography of the dual axe wielding barbarian, and I've never really done it before, so I wanted to capture it in this build. Obviously, it is suboptimal. We're using weapons that, at the end of the day, aren't the best in the game for sure. Battle axes are an extremely underutilized category. Otherwise, feel free to do something else with this that is more powerful, if that is what you want to go with. But, I mean, again, come on, you cannot deny that this guy looks like a barbarian. But yeah, you have a couple of options for ranged weapons on this build too. We're not really going to be using ranged weapons as ranged weapons on this build, but there's a couple of that we can just slap in our range slot and gain the benefits of. First up, there's the Bow of the Banshee. On a hit, possibly inflict Frightened, getting a 1d4 bonus to attack and damage against frightened creatures. So basically, because we are such an intimidating barbarian, just by hitting with any weapon that we have, these count. It doesn't have to be the Bow of the Banshee itself. We can potentially frighten them, and then doing so will give us a basically bless on our attack rolls and damage, which is awesome. So I felt like it fit perfectly for this build. The other option is the Vicious Shortbow, which has the same effect as the Dollar Amorous thing as the Vicious Battle Axe. So you can stack up that critical hit damage to be a 14 instead of just 7. So up to you which one you want to pick here. Moving on to the headwear, we have the Horns of the Berserker. Again, we're this Berserker Battle Rager Force of Nature type dude. I felt like this was appropriate. So, you get a +2 bonus to attack rolls when attacking creatures that have already taken damage. This bonus to our attack rolls is actually really nice because it means we have to use reckless attack less and less, meaning that we're less likely to get hit, which again makes us even more tanky. And our unarmed and melee attacks deal an additional 2 necrotic damage as long as you don't have your full health, which you won't, you're a barbarian. And if you don't deal any damage in a turn, you take a d4 of necrotic damage. Whoop-de-skippy-doo. Like I said, this is just a perfect thing. It works with our unarmed strikes and our, which we get with Flurry of Blows, or our bonus action attack, again, if you're not dual-wielding, but you can still use it even if you are dual-wielding, so, again, it's a pick-your-poison type thing. Choose what works best in the moment. So yeah, it just buffs all of our damage, fits on theme, gives us a higher chance to hit. Nothing wrong with it. In the other game, though, you can pick up the Lifebringer. Whenever the wearer gains lightning charges, they also gain 3 temporary hit points. I know it's really underwhelming, but it kind of fits with the synergy of the build, so we're going to go with it. Next up, the Enraging Heart Garb, a classic. While raging, the wearer generates 2 turns of wrath. Unfortunately, this is still bugged. Please fix this, Larian. That doesn't actually do anything at the moment, but once it does, you'll be able to gain a buff to your melee weapon attacks for each turn of the condition that it's remaining, so very, very cool. It's also going to give you a +2 to Constitution, which gives us a bit more HP. So actually, I guess our unarmored defense can come from either our Constitution or our Wisdom. Doesn't really matter, they're both the same. But in the early game, you can pick up the Protecty Spark Wall. You get a +1 bonus to spell save DC. But the wearer does have a +1 bonus to armor class and saving throws as long as they have lightning charges. How are we getting those lightning charges, you ask? Well, let's look at these sparkle hands. On a hit with an unarmed attack, the wearer gains 2 lightning charges, and while imbued with lightning charges, attacks against metal constructs or foes wearing metal armor gain advantage. So by using our bonus action unarmed strike or our flurry of blows, we can build up lightning charges. Lightning charges themselves give you a +1 to attack rolls, and all of your attacks will deal an additional 1 lightning damage while you have the charges. If you gain 5 charges, they are consumed the next time you deal damage, dealing an additional 1d8. Because we make so many unarmed strikes in a turn based on kind of how we play this character, you'll be able to build up lightning charges very, very quickly. And the thing I found with the dual wielding playstyle is you just kind of do 1 unarmed strike, and then all of your axe attacks have a +1 to the attack and damage rolls, which is very, very nice. What people don't realize about lightning charges is, yeah, as long as you keep up the charges and don't actually get up to 5, you give all of your attacks a basically a +1 on the weapon, which is really, really cool. Like, again, I feel like that's kind of underutilized. Maybe I need to showcase that in a bit more of an efficient way in the future. Who knows? But you can also dub this in with the water sparklers. When the wearer stands in a water surface during combat, it becomes electrified. Remember, we can create these surfaces with create water. If the wearer starts their turn on an electrified surface, they gain 3 lightning charges. You may think this is overkill, but the electrocution effect that comes from electrified surfaces is so powerful. And I kind of like stacking these up with the Sparkle Hands to just be able to constantly cycle through that 5-charge combo to just get that extra D of lightning damage really, really frequently. But if you feel like that's overkill and you don't really need it, then feel free to swap out the Sparkle Hands for something else. Maybe the Gauntlets of Hill Giant Strength in Act 3 when you get your hands on them, to just do incredible damage, and again get that the Great Weapon Masters fighting style online if you want to go down that route instead. Next up though, for our amulets, we have the Sentient Amulet. You can get this early on in Act 1 during the kind of Underdark stuff, and what that will do for you is that'll give you a lesser version of this amulet, which you can follow a fun little quest line to gain the full version later on. This will give you the Shatter spell, as well as the ability to, once per long rest, restore a number of key points equal to your martial arts die. So for us, that should be about 6, because our martial arts die is a 1d6. So overall, it's more resources. There's a fun side quest attached to it. You may feel like this character probably wouldn't do the side quest though, because it does involve helping like a ghost, which maybe this character would not have enough compassion for, but it's entirely up to you if you want to do that or not. I mean, the way you get this amulet at the end is by, spoiler alert, betraying that ghost and killing them because they rose up as a zombie, so you know what, maybe it is on brand. Either way, this is a free slot, put whatever you like in here. Next up is kind of another free slot, because it's the Ring of Free Action. See what I did there? You ignore the effects of difficult terrain and cannot be paralyzed or restrained. Basically, we are an unstoppable force of nature, we're not going to be held down, and we kind of want that land stride thing where difficult terrain no longer affects us, because again, we are nature. We are the fury of the storm. We are the storm that is approaching. I swear to God, that's the last time I'm going to make that reference. But yeah, Ring of Free Action just made a lot of sense for this build, but feel free to swap it out if you like. However, if you are doing the Water Sparkless combo, you kind of need the Sparks Wall. It makes it so you can't be electrocuted, because yes, you can be electrocuted by your own electrified surfaces. This makes it so you can't. You also gain resistance to lightning damage, which kind of just makes sense for this build, in my opinion. But yeah, that is the build. No cap clothing, no modded elements this time. I mean, the closest thing we've got to a modded element on this build is the Zephyr Strike spell, which we kind of just got for free and doesn't really matter on this build. So yes, this is another vanilla one for all the vanilla heads out there who don't like modded builds. But yeah, no, this was quite a fun one. And you'll see from the combat footage, even with the kind of sub-optimal setup of like accidentally doing it with Berserker instead of something a bit better, this build still really does work. It does a ton of damage. It's extremely tanky. You have a lot of fun options available to you. It's just fun. This is a combo you've seen before, but I do think that this version of the build is more accurate to Talos. You get the Battle Rager stuff. And I do kind of want to do more with Talos in the future, because I actually find his church to be very interesting. Again, the Stormlords kind of going down the more spellcastery route, with this like idea of like rage casting in a way. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to mix Barbarian and maybe Sorcerer or something, but I could try and make that work. That could be fun. I've kind of done it before. Who knows? We will see. But yeah, no, I really wanted to give this one a go, and I really, really like it. I think it is a fun build. Again, it's a classic combo that I've done a few times on the channel before. But anyway, that is the build. There's not really much else to say about that, but I do want to talk about the next video that I'm going to do, because we've got Artificer now. We have Artificer on all platforms, which means you're getting Artificer builds. So expect that hopefully later this week. I think I'm going to sit down on Saturday and theory craft a few ways of using Artificer and then get a build out hopefully this weekend, probably on a Sunday, if I don't get lazy again, which I'll be honest, I've been doing a lot. Nobody sticks around to the ends of these videos, so hey, I'm not going to get in trouble for that one. So yes, that is the end of this video, I think. I'm all done here. Oh, I will say, one thing I forgot to mention is that this armor is dyed in the Pirate Queen dye from the P4 dye mod, again available on all platforms. There we go, last thing I wanted to mention. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.